Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So, Special Counsel Jack Smith report was released today. This was, of course, about the investigation into Donald Trump's alleged attempted coup. The other portion of the report was not released because there are still two alleged co-conspirators that would be going on trial if Donald Trump hadn't won the election. So, of course, that investigation and that whole case is going to disappear as of next week. But anyway, the report that was released is 174 pages long. 30 pages were the index, though, and then there were several pages that were just photos from the Capitol attack on January 6th. But it lays out the basis for each of the charges against Trump, also the underlying alleged facts. Also, it talks about Donald Trump's likely defense for each charge and why they believe that it would fail. So, for example, they said that Trump relied on the advice of counsel, or they believe that that's one of the arguments that Trump was going to make. Special counsel, or the special counsel, cited case law and wrote that, quote, where counsel acts as an accomplice to the crime, then, that defense is moot. You can't use that as a defense. And then they noted that two of the alleged co-conspirators were attorneys who were providing Trump with advice. Also, they said that Trump would probably try to claim that this is in violation of his First Amendment free speech rights and protections. He already tried this in some areas, and when he was trying to blunt this investigation and slow it down. And the special counsel said that Mr. Trump, quote, had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the 2020 presidential election, and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. But, quote, Mr. Trump then used those lies as the instrument of his four criminal offenses because he used those knowingly false statements regarding specific facts to commit the crimes charged in the superseding indictment. They were not protected by First Amendment. So, yeah, you can't, you can say whatever you want, but you can't say what you want to try to commit a crime. So that's the difference. He took action to try to commit a crime and used his speech to incite his followers and to make it appear as though what he was doing was legitimate. Those are the allegations. Again, this will never go to trial because Trump was elected. So for all of those idiots out there who voted for him, like I saw in one focus group, or is like, oh, he's probably going to go to prison anyway, so I really voted for Vance. You're a moron. You're a moron who doesn't understand how any of this works, and you don't understand how corrupt Trump is and how he gets out of everything. So anyway, I pulled some key quotes out of this report that I thought, really sum things up, or that really highlight some details that maybe we didn't know, or, key facts that we should remember and maybe repeat to people who don't know what's going on. So, for example, it says, quote, as alleged in the original and superseding indictments, substantial evidence demonstrates that Mr. Trump then engaged in an unprecedented criminal effort to overturn the legitimate results of the election in order to retain power. Very key, that's the overarching theme here. They went on to say, quote, Mr. Trump also attempted to use power and authority of the United States government in furtherance of his scheme. So it wasn't like he just said, again, I didn't lose, this was a rigged election, I really won, the Democrats cheated, blah, blah, blah. No, he actually used his power as the leader of the country to try to overturn this election. It also says, quote, this included attempts to induce state officials to ignore true vote counts, to manufacture fraudulent slates of presidential electors in 7 states that he had lost, to force Justice Department officials and his own Vice President, Michael R. Pence, to act in contravention of their oaths and to instead advance Mr. Trump's personal interests. And on January 6, 2021, to direct an angry mob to the United States Capitol to obstruct the congressional certification of the presidential election and then leverage rioters' violence to further delay it. It went on to say, quote, evidence from a variety of sources established that Mr. Trump knew that there was no outcome determinative fraud in the 2020 election, that many of the specific claims he made were untrue, and that he lost the election. He knew this because some of the highest ranking officials in his own administration, including the vice president, told him directly that there was no evidence to support his claim. Mr. Trump's own advisors, both within and outside of his campaign, told him the same. Further down in the report, they pick up this theme again, and the special counsel wrote, quote, the office developed further evidence of Mr. Trump's knowledge that his claims were untrue from witnesses who reported that he planned to use fraud claims before the election had even happened. For instance, in advance of the election, advisors told Mr. Trump that the election would be close and that initial returns might be misleading, showing an early lead for Mr. Trump that would diminish as mail-in ballots were counted. In response, Mr. Trump suggested that if the prediction were true, which it ultimately was, he would simply declare victory before all ballots were counted and a winner was projected. So that was that red mirage that we all knew was coming, where it looked like Trump was going to win because the first votes that are counted in every presidential election are the day of votes, which have been for many, many years now, Republicans who show up in person, and then as the night goes on, the other ballots that are coming in and being counted, the last ballots that come in or that are counted are the mail-in ballots, which lean Democratic because the Democrats vote typically by mail. They use their mail-in ballots more. It's just the way it is. So we all knew that was coming, but Trump used that because his voters, his supporters, are unaware because they are uninformed because they watch Fear News Network. So they didn't know that. They didn't know about the red mirage in advance. Anyway, so there were also a couple of details that we hadn't previously heard about conversations between Trump and his vice president, Mike Pence. And of course, this is because Mike Pence was loath to speak publicly and trash Trump without being subpoenaed. So they got him to admit some things under subpoena that he hadn't before. So it said, quote, in repeated conversations, day after day, Mr. Trump pressed Mr. Pence to use his ministerial position as president of the Senate to change the election outcome, often by citing false claims of election fraud as justification. He even falsely told Mr. Pence that the quote-unquote Justice Department was finding major infractions. When Mr. Pence repeatedly refused to act as Mr. Trump wanted, Mr. Trump told him that, quote-unquote, hundreds of thousands of people would hate, quote-unquote, hate his guts and think he was, quote-unquote, stupid, and that Mr. Pence was, quote-unquote, too honest. So we knew about the too honest quote, but we didn't know that he was like resorting to literal, third grade tactics. You're going to be stupid. People are going to think you're dumb. People are going to hate your guts. Seriously, it sounds like elementary students. If you don't let me cheat off your paper, like, I'm going to hate your guts forever. So, anyway, this is our new president, or our repeat president. Um, Anyway, they went on to say later in the report that they considered charging Trump with even more crimes. So they considered charging him with insurrection, but the special counsel said that there was limited guidance and there were very few historical examples that would, or no, really, no historical examples that apply to these set of circumstances, because no one has ever done this before. And they talked about that in the report. And then the special counsel said, they weren't confident about how to present the evidence. Like, what would we need to show to prove insurrection versus riot? And then they also considered charging Trump with the Anti-Riot Act and conspiracy to impede or injure an officer of the United States. So they poo-pooed those, decided not to do them. In regard to Trump's co-conspirators, this was really interesting. So they said, quote, before the department concluded that this case must be dismissed, the office had made a preliminary determination that the admissible evidence could justify seeking charges against certain co-conspirators. The office had also begun to evaluate how to proceed, including whether any potential charged case should be joined with Mr. Trump's or brought separately. So before Trump won the election and before they said, I guess this is over, we got to scrap this whole thing, they were considering charging his alleged co-conspirators. Something that we all said should have been done from day one. And maybe if they had done that, even if they charged them separately, that case may have already gone to court, because those people don't have the sway, they don't have the cachet, they don't have the money to fight this as Trump did. So it's very possible that case, if they had charged his alleged co-conspirators separately, could have been done by now. So frustrating. Everyone dropped the ball, but really primarily this falls on Merrick Garland. If he had started this the day after Biden took office, there was plenty of evidence. We all knew what Trump was up to. We knew about the fake electors before January 6th. So the fact that he just sat on this for over a year just freaking pisses me off to no end. Anyway, the special counsel went on to say, quote, the office concluded that Mr. Trump's conduct violated several federal criminal statutes and that the admissible evidence would be sufficient to obtain and sustain a conviction. This is a reminder of previous reporting. There's a section in here that talks about how Elon Musk, his failing social media company, Twitter, they tried to protect Trump. And the judge referred to it as extraordinary. And the judge said it was, quote, the first time in their nearly 17-year existence as a company that they did this. And just to remind you of what a liar and what a scumbag Elon Musk is, this is what he did. This was before he publicly got behind Trump. This was before he threw $250 million at Trump's campaign. Twitter refused to comply with a warrant for Trump data, for all of his communications on that platform, unless they allowed Twitter to warn Trump first and to allow Trump to fight them in court. And the judge was like, no, this is not the way you do this. This is not the way this has ever gone down. All that does is give this person a heads up, and then they can make all of that information disappear, right? Or they can go after people and threaten witnesses. which, that brings me to another point and other things that they mentioned in here. So I'll get to that in just a second, but very interesting footnote about Republican Congressman Scott Perry. It said, quote, "The government obtained records, including encrypted messages between Representative Perry and co-conspirator 4 that it intended to use at trial prior to the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity. Irrespective of that decision, the records would have been admissible in a trial of Mr. Trump's co-conspirators." So I believe co-conspirator 4 is former Justice Department Attorney Jeffrey Clark. He is mentioned throughout this report just as co-conspirator 4, but it seems like that's who they're referring to. And remember, Republican Congressman Scott Perry, he is the one who introduced Jeffrey Clark to Donald Trump. And just to refresh your memory on who Jeff Clark is, he is the guy who Trump was going to install as the new attorney general after Bill Barr said, "I don't want any part of this shady shit. I'm out," and he left. And so he was going to install Clark as the new attorney general because Clark was willing to lie for him, allegedly. Clark was willing to issue these letters, send out these letters to different states, these swing states that Trump lost, saying that falsely that the Justice Department was concerned about evidence that they were finding of election fraud. So because he was the one willing to do that, Trump was going to put him in there to head the department. And then everyone else, like the acting attorney general and his people and, other people in the administration were like, we will all leave. We will do a mass resignation and you will be left with a ghost town. And that's the only reason that Trump didn't do it. And then I want to remind you too, that Hakeem Jeffries, who liberals just love to put on this pedestal because he says all the right things about Trump, he protected these people. He protected Congressman Scott Perry. When the DOJ wanted to obtain evidence against Trump, and they subpoenaed Scott Perry's devices to get evidence for this case, it was Hakeem Jeffries, when he was in charge of the House of Representatives, when he was, the leader, well, he's still the leader of the Democratic Party, but as the leader of the House of Representatives, he said, no, we are not going to have this. You are not going to be looking at members of Congress devices because, this is in violation of, these laws that we have, these rules that we have, and we need to be able to debate on laws and things coming before the Congress in private, and I'm not going to allow it. So he actually stood up for Scott Perry and said no. So just remember that if you're a, Hakeem Jeffries stan. The guy is a scumbag. He is a backstabber. He is all about power and he is all about the old guard. I know he's not an old guard. He's not one of, he's not like Nancy Pelosi's age, but this is why she chose him to lead the Democrats in the House instead of someone like an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or someone else, who's a progressive who wants to get rid of the corruption, because she knows Hakeem Jeffries will allow the corruption. He is all for it. So keep that in mind. In addition, special counsel, the special counsel noted how Trump used public threats to intimidate witnesses. So this is what I alluded to earlier. And they talked about how his supporters would then attack and threaten witnesses and judges. So he would put out the dog whistle and they would all start barking and threatening people. So that's what we're up against for the next 4 years. Anyway, guys, not a whole lot that we didn't already know, but a few juicy tidbits in there, and it just pisses me off again that they didn't go after his co-conspirators. But this is exactly why It is paramount, absolutely imperative that they follow through with these state charges against his alleged co-conspirators. So let's hope and pray that Georgia still goes through. They're still attacking Fani Willis over in Georgia, the district attorney over there. The Republicans now are reopening an investigation into her in Georgia specifically. We have the Arizona lawsuit going on or case. So I'll keep you all posted. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like this video. Please share it with others so they understand all these details. Become a subscriber if you have not. There's still so many of you who watch the show who aren't subscribed. It is free. All you have to do is click that subscribe button below these videos on YouTube. It tremendously helps with the algorithm and to get more eyeballs on the show. And if you can support the show with a donation, I truly appreciate it. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.